And joining me now is Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana. Speaker Johnson, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Always great to be with you. Thanks.
It is great to have you. And as we sit here today, we are in the midst of a partial government shutdown. So I want to start right there. The latest reports are that you've spoken to Leader Hakeem Jeffries, that he has made it clear that you don't have Democrat support to reopen the government. So let me put this bottom line question to you. Are you confident that the government will reopen on Monday with Republican votes? Do you have enough Republican support?
Well, let's say I'm confident that we'll do it at least by Tuesday. We have a logistical challenge of getting everyone in town. And because of the conversation I had with Hakeem Jeffries, I know that we've got to pass a rule and probably do this mostly on our own. I think that's very unfortunate. Here's what's happened. You know, the House and Senate appropriators worked very well together, bicameral, bipartisan, committee-led process, especially after the 43-day shutdown, the longest in U.S. history last fall. No one wanted to put that pain on the American people again. The Democrats forced it. We were insistent that we would not allow that to happen. But, you know, I tip my hat to everybody, appropriators in both parties who got this together. After the Senate acted over the weekend, we will now have 11 of 12 separate appropriations bills approved by both chambers. Because they modified our package, they've sent it over a little differently, which means we've got to address the bills again. So they're going to separate the Department of Homeland Security bill. Our intention is by Tuesday to fund all agencies of the federal government except for that one, and then we'll have 2 weeks of good faith negotiations to figure it out.
And just bottom line, you think you have enough Republican votes to reopen the government by Tuesday?
Yeah, because Republicans are going to do the responsible thing and fund the government. They're playing.
But you have a razor-thin margin. That's what I'm getting at.
I have a one-vote margin, yes, for the rest of 2026. But we're going to demonstrate once again that this is the party that takes governing seriously. The Democrats play games with this, and I think it's very unfortunate because what they're doing is they're jeopardizing services to the American people. When you're talking about the Department of Homeland Security, remember what's included in that. You have TSA agents for the airports. You have the Coast Guard. You have FEMA. We're in the middle of a winter storm disaster on the East Coast. We can't play games with this.
So let's talk about what Democrats are demanding as a part of this. They want to see changes to DHS, to ICE, in the wake of the deaths of those two Americans in Minneapolis. The changes they're asking for include an end to roving patrols, no more face masks, mandatory body cameras, and judicial warrant requirements. Given what has been happening on the ground in Minneapolis, Mr. Speaker, do you support any or all of those changes?
Listen, there's been tragedies in Minnesota and in Minneapolis in particular, brought about in large measure by the circumstances on the ground. You have the governor and local officials there, in some cases inciting violence. They're encouraging citizens to disrupt the operations of law enforcement, and it sets up a dangerous situation.
But they're calling for peaceful protests.
Well, they are, but they're also saying to resist. They're also saying to, you know, they're doxing the agents of ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And so when you're talking about masking, the reason that ICE agents wear masks is to protect their own identities and protect their own families. And in some circumstances, they've had a price put on their heads effectively by local officials, and that's what's created the dangerous conditions.
But these state and local officials respectfully didn't pull the triggers that left these two Americans dead. President Trump has even acknowledged that ICE has made mistakes. Do you think within that context, any changes need to be made to ICE and the way it's operating on the ground?
Look, I think President Trump was right to acknowledge that. I think he's operating in good faith. He said he wanted to turn the temperature down. He put Tom Homan in charge there. He was right to deputize him over that situation. He has 40 years experience in Border Patrol and in these issues. So I think that this is going to happen, but we need good faith on both sides. Some of these conditions and requests that they've made are obviously reasonable and should happen, but others are going to require a lot more negotiation.
And you'll support some of those that you say are reasonable?
Yes. In fact, I was in the Oval Office with the president a few days ago when he was on the phone with Leader Schumer, and they agreed, and Tom Homan was on the other line. And they agreed to most of those conditions. But the mask, for example, the additional judicial requirement for a warrant would be a whole other layer of effectively bureaucracy. Remember, the immigration judges have already issued warrants, and that's what the ICE officials are acting upon. So there's a lot of details in this. We could get deep in the weeds, but we will do that over the next 2 weeks. And I hope that Democrats will be in good faith, as Republicans are, to try to bring some order to all this.
Are there any proposed changes you wouldn't agree with? They're demanding also roving patrols and body cameras be worn by ICE officials?
I think even Tom Homan has acknowledged both of those things are acceptable and what he was intending to do already. So I think we're on the path to get agreement, and I really hope that everybody will come to the table in good faith. That's what's going to be required here.
Let me zoom out and ask you about Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. As you know, there's been a lot of focus on her hours after Alex Preddy was killed. Secretary Noem accused him of being a, quote, domestic terrorist before the investigation had been done. She said he had brandished a gun at agents, which videos and DHS itself later contradicted. Do you think the Department of Homeland Security needs new leadership, Mr. Speaker?
Look, I think Kristi Noem has been called to do a very difficult job. Remember that the agency was effectively eviscerated for 4 years under the Biden administration. Wide open borders, so nearly 20 million illegal aliens came across that border, and many of them are dangerous, hardened criminals and even terrorists. So she's taken over a crushing assignment. I mean, anyone who is in that position would have a difficult time with it. I think it's important for all of us at any level not to prejudge circumstances until we get all the facts, and I think that that's been a good reminder to everyone. We've seen now in the last couple of days that Mr. Preddy that passed, it was a tragic situation, that he was involved in at least in the week before that tragic event in inciting law enforcement, and everybody's seen the video now of him kicking the taillights out of an ICE vehicle. If local law enforcement had been involved, we have to ask ourselves this question: would he still be alive right now? Because if they had apprehended him and he was in jail safely, he would not have been on the streets to have been involved in that circumstance.
But you don't think kicking a taillight amounts to something that's punishable by death, though?
Well, no, of course not. No, and that was a separate circumstance. But the point is, it is unlawful to impede the operations of law enforcement, and it sets up a dangerous situation when people do that.
But do you have 100% confidence in Kristi Noem, Mr. Speaker?
I do have confidence in Kristi Noem. I think that
full confidence.
Yes. Look, she has a difficult job. I have a lot of sympathy for her job. I've got a difficult job too. Look, I think that there will be a recalibration in some measure. This is President Trump saying that they're going to look at the way operations are conducted. The intent is to rid our communities of dangerous, illegal aliens, hardened criminals who are here causing great havoc across the country, and they need to continue that work, and that is fully supported by the American people.
All right, let me ask you about another major story. On Friday, the Justice Department released what it said were the rest of the Epstein files. A group of Epstein survivors responded with a statement saying it's not enough, saying, quote, Epstein's enablers continue to benefit from secrecy. The Justice Department cannot claim it is finished releasing files until every legally required document is released and every abuser and enabler is fully exposed. As long as the survivors say that not enough is being done, has DOJ finished its work, in your opinion?
We all want every abuser and enabler to be fully exposed. We want justice to be done. It's long overdue. But I do think the Department of Justice is complying with the law, that we have now 3.5 million documents. You have over 2,000 videos and I think 180,000 images out there. And as soon as they finish the final release, they give us the full report to Congress, which is required under the law, and then they issue I think in the Federal Register, they have to publish why they've made any redactions. The DOJ will have fully complied with the law and done their job. But think of the mass, the volume of documents that they've had to go through. Remember, they have to go through and make sure that they're protecting the innocent. So some of these young women who were victimized, we do not want them to endure further harm. And so that's been the intention, is to make sure that their names are taken out of that.
President Trump's name appears throughout the Epstein files, including in many of the new documents released this week. Now, we want to stress appearing in the Epstein files does not amount to or imply criminal wrongdoing. But do you have any outstanding questions, given that, about the relationship between President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein?
I do not. I mean, I've spoken to the president about this privately and personally many times, and he's spoken very candidly and openly to the public. He says the same things privately that he does publicly. He's never had any concern about that. Remember, President Trump was one of the first people that called Epstein out, and he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago, off the property, because he heard of some of the nefarious things he was engaged in. He's never had any concern about that at all.
He did at one point call these files a Democratic hoax. But let me ask you about something.
Well, what he said specifically was the hoax of the Democrats trying to turn this into a political issue and use it against him. That was wrong.
Let me ask you about something that Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, who's now resigned from Congress last month, in part over this fight to release the Epstein files. This is something she said about you in an interview with the New York Times. I want to give you an opportunity to respond. She says, quote, "I want you to know that Johnson is not our speaker. He is not our leader. And in the legislative branch, a totally separate body of government, he is literally 100% under the direct orders of the White House." Mr. Speaker, how do you respond? Are you 100% under the direct orders of the White House?
It's comical. If Marjorie had ever attended conference meetings and been involved as a member, as she should, she would know that that is simply not true. I vigorously defend Article 1 of the Constitution. That's the legislative branch. I was a constitutional law attorney before I became Speaker. The President and I work closely together because we have unified government. That's what the American people voted for last fall. They gave the Republican Party control of the White House, the Senate, and the House. And the intention there is that you work efficiently and effectively together. So the President and I have conversations, sometimes multiple times a day, about policy procedures. We have a lot of our discussions and sometimes debates together behind the curtain, because you don't want to do that when you're in the same party out in public. That has made a very effective and efficient government. And I will say this, the first year of the Trump administration that we just got through was probably one of the most productive in all the history of Congress. And you can go back, that's what history is going to show. Very productive, very efficient, effective government. We had to reverse all the madness of the 4 years of the Biden administration, and we got so much of it done already, and still more yet to do.
Is there any area where you do disagree with President Trump? Is there one place that you can point to?
Yes, but as I just said, we do this privately and not public. I'm going to support my president. Our party is leading. We are governing. We have closed the border. We've gotten the economy going again. We're fulfilling our promises. And that's why we're going to win the midterm election, by the way, and keep this going.
Okay, you take me to my next question.
I did that
in fact, I want to talk to you about the midterms. And I want to play you something. This was in focus this week. President Trump said this last week at Davos. This was about the 2020 elections. Take a look.
It was a rigged election. Everybody now knows that. They found out. People will soon be prosecuted for what they did. It's probably breaking news, but it should be. It was a rigged election. Can't have rigged elections.
Is it healthy for this country's democracy, for the sitting president to be questioning the 2020 election 5 years ago, something claims that have been deemed to be false, again now that he lost?
What's healthy for our country and our democracy is for everyone to be laser focused on election integrity. If you don't have free and fair
election integrity,
well, yes,
Mr. Speaker.
Yes,
this was asked and answered and litigated and relitigated. The page has been turned. He's still talking about an election that he lost, allegations which have been deemed claimed.
The president
false.
is keeping the focus on election integrity. It must be in the forefront of everyone's minds, because if you don't have a free and fair election, you cannot maintain a constitutional republic. He's bothered by what happened in 2020. And we all know there was a lot of irregularity and problem in that, and we're not going to relitigate it. That's not the point. What we have to do is go forward and ensure that we don't have these problems in the future. That's why the House has passed the SAVE Act twice already. We have further election integrity measures that we're working on now, and everybody in both parties should applaud that. They should support it.
You're saying there were irregularities. State and federal election officials called 2020 the most secure election in history. But let me ask you about what's happening in Georgia this week. FBI agents executed a warrant at an election hub in Fulton County, seizing ballots and records tied to the 2020 election. I want you to listen to what Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff of Georgia had to say about this search. Take a look.
And here's the thing. This is a shot across the bow at the midterm elections. He tried to steal power when he lost it in 2020. We have to be prepared for all kinds of schemes and shenanigans. We have to be prepared for him to try to deprive people of their voting rights in Georgia.
What do you say to that allegation that President Trump is going to meddle in the 2026 midterm elections, that's what he's doing in Georgia.
I find it comical that one of the senators from Georgia is talking about schemes in elections. Remember, Georgia was example A of that in the 2020 election.
There were two statewide recounts in Georgia, Mr. Speaker.
They sent mail-out ballots to everyone. Everyone knows all of the problems that occurred in Georgia. It was very controversial and remains so to this day because of all the things that happened there. Again, we're not going to relitigate that, but what we have to focus on is going forward to ensure that there are not questions about the elections, and that's why Republicans are working at the federal and the state levels to clean those things up, to clean up voter rolls, to make sure illegals are not voting, for example. That's what the SAVE Act is about. And we have to continue that, and the president is keeping a proper focus on it. This investigation is to ensure that all the questions about the elections in Fulton County are investigated properly so that people have confidence in the system again. That's very important.
But there are really no questions about election integrity from 2020 that have not been asked and answered. Even the Republican-led the Republican-led governor has pointed out it's been years and no one has ever come forward under oath with evidence of fraud in Georgia. But let me ask you, was it appropriate for the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard? She was on the ground there. She is prohibited by law from taking part in domestic law enforcement. Was it appropriate for her to be a part of the raid on the election center in Georgia?
I don't know. I do believe the D-N.Y has some involvement and some role to play in ensuring election integrity. But I don't know the details of that, and we have to reserve judgment. I will.
The National Security Act of 1947 bars U.S. intelligence agencies from exercising law enforcement powers.
But we don't know that that's what happened there. I don't know that she was part of a law enforcement function there.
Okay, let me ask you, bottom line, do you have confidence in the results of the 2026 midterm elections that they will be free and fair?
I do, because of all these efforts and the legislation that we've been working on, and the efforts and the attention that we're keeping on this subject. I think it's very important. And again, it's not a partisan thing. Every American should applaud that, and we'll continue.
All right, House Speaker Mike Johnson, thank you so much for being here.
Always great. Thank you.
Good to see you.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.